afternoon and welcome. It's so nice to be back here on the grounds of the Octagon House Museum for this event. We have not been here since 2018 with our rain date in 2019, and of course we all know nothing happened in 2020. So everyone welcome, and thank you especially for coming out on this very warm day today. We know it's not going to rain until this event is over. So my name is Melissa Lampe, and I'm the president of the Watertown Historical Society. Just a couple of business items before we get to the concert. One is we are running a 50-50 raffle today, so if you like to gamble and have fun, we have volunteers who will be selling raffle tickets. One ticket for $5, 3 tickets for $10, or an arm span, which is about 30 tickets for $20. And if you purchase an arm span, you'll get a complimentary Heritage of Our Homes booklet to read, which talks about all the great old houses in Watertown. So this special event every year would not be possible without our very generous sponsors. They include Reese Industries, Hoffmeister Funeral Home and Cremation Service, Marie Dobrats, the 7-Up Bottling Company, and the Dodge Jefferson County's Genealogical Society. So coming up, some special events on August 16th will be our third and final outdoor Music at the Museum concert. If any of you have caught these this year, we do them in the back of the house, and we have a band once a month, and it's so much fun. So on August 16th at 6:30, we'll have Red Hot Trad Jazz, which is a New Orleans jazz style band. And then on September 18th is our annual Octagon House Antiques and Artisans Show. So we hope to see you back here for these special events. Speaking of special events, today has been proclaimed Linda Worth Day in Watertown. Linda? Some of you may know, Linda Worth is celebrating her 25th anniversary as the manager of the Octagon House Museum. Yes, congratulations to Linda. So even though we're a seasonal museum, this house, the grounds, everything need attention year-round. There are so many things that Linda does that she does out of passion for the home, passion for the organization, so many things that likely go unnoticed, but the more I'm involved here, the more I know all that she does, because this is a huge undertaking, and we're the tourist destination in the city, and it's really just, the Octagon House is so special, and Linda is equally special, and we're so happy to have her a part of our organization for hopefully many more years to come. So we have a gift for Linda. So this is a special gift for Linda from the Board of Directors of the Watertown Historical Society. And we have a very special guest with us today. We have Mayor Emily McFarland, and Emily is going to read the proclamation that designates today as Linda Worth Day.
So I'm going to say a lot of whereas statements in just a moment here, because that's what we do in government. But I was just sharing with Linda, I brought my son Cal here today, and on the way here, he was telling me about a time he came here with my mother-in-law and his aunt. And to be completely frank, and I was frank with Linda, I don't remember it, but I was there too. And I think what stuck out to me is that my son, who's only 6, has had so many countless memories, but on the way here, driving here, he remembered driving up the road, and he remembered seeing this building, and he remembered walking through. And I think that's what makes things like this so profound and so impactful to communities like ours. So I'm on a personal front incredibly thankful for all that you've done to make sure that this Octagon House stays a big part of our community for many years to come. So the proclamation reads, whereas Linda Worth has been a dedicated employee of the Watertown Historical Society for 25 years, and whereas Linda has gone above and beyond in her position as manager of the Octagon House Museum to ensure a memorable experience for guests and to promote tourism in Watertown, and whereas Linda has championed and worked steadfastly to preserve the historic Octagon House Museum and America's first kindergarten for generations to come, and whereas Linda strives to ensure the museum remains a friendly and enjoyable workplace, and that the museum provides a positive first impression to visitors to Watertown from out of town, out of state, and from around the world. Now, therefore, I, Emily McFarland, Mayor of the City of Watertown, do hereby proclaim Sunday, August 8th, 2021, to be Linda Worth Day. Congratulations, Linda.
be here if I did. I really enjoy the people, enjoy my job. You get teary-eyed, but thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. Saw the porches go on, porches go off. The Watertown History Center. I stood in the window and watched them take that building down and put it back up, but it's just an honor to be here, and I love working with the board. We have a great board going on, and things are happening all the time. You meet new people, you never know who's going to walk through that door, which is fun, and it makes it interesting too. So please, everybody, come see us. We have a lot going on, and enjoy the band.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this afternoon's performance of the 1st Brigade Band. We missed you. We are going to take you to the 1860s when all music was live, and a concert on a Sunday afternoon in a beautiful park like this was a common thing. As we have described many times in our concerts here at the Octagon House, the duties of Civil War musicians were many and various. Music was an integral part of the war, from recruitment to battle to bereavement, and finally to homecoming. And homecoming defines how we see today's event. Let's put the anxieties of the forced estrangement of the last 2 years aside for a few hours. Let's enjoy the obvious benefits of music, what it does to our physical being as well as to our life force. Let's greet some old friends, and let's meet some new ones. Let's not wait 1 minute longer. Ladies and gentlemen, the 1st Brigade Band and its bandmaster, John Conley.
Warriors flag, Republican flag, the Star-Spangled Banner defend. For proudly it waves over patriot graves, and there it shall wave to the end.
Let's give our thanks to Doug, to Jeremy, to Bill, and also to Zach. Thank you, gentlemen. I have another gentleman to introduce you to now. Those that have been here before know that we do a little bit of a description of our instrument collection because they do look very odd as to what most people think of as a brass band in this century. So Paul, are you ready? Paul Schmidt's going to come forward and he's going to do a little description of our 1st Brigade Band. Mr. Paul Schmidt.
Thank you, Miss Kate. I'd like to say just a few words about the band you see before you. First off, and we'll get this out of the way quickly because it's the boring part, this is what we call an E-flat brass band. That just means that unlike modern bands where B-flat brass instruments usually carry the melody, here it's E-flat instruments. They're about a half octave higher. That entire side of the band, in fact, is E-flat instruments. This side is B-flat instruments. I'd like to talk about the keys a little bit. They alternate, and to get into that, I'll say another thing about these instruments, that they're all sax horns, at least the brass instruments. Sounds like saxophone. Well, that's because it was invented by the same guy. But he scaled his instruments with E-flats and B-flats alternating, just like saxophones, strangely. And on that side of the band, we start out with E-flat cornets. If they would come up, please. And then we go to this side, and we have B-flat cornets. That side we have E-flat altos, a lot of them. And then on this side we have B-flat tenors and B-flat basses. And then we go to that side and we have E-flat basses, which we like to call tubas for short, even though they're not really tubas. And they're not nearly as big or heavy as they look. Now, so I also want to say something about the configurations of the instruments, because everybody notices that. So modern bands, if it's a small instrument, it's usually bell front. So bell fronts, we have bell front instruments, and I think today they're all cornets. We have some others that aren't, but we also have big instruments in modern bands, like tubas and euphoniums, that are bell up. Most of the time we have bell up instruments. And in this band, they go down to something a bit smaller, the altos, that you don't usually see in modern bands in this configuration. And we have helical instruments, which were intended for riding on horseback. So the weight was carried by the shoulder, and the player played with one hand and held the reins of the horse with the other. And then we have the kind that's most associated with the Civil War, and that's the over-the-shoulder instrument. And these were designed so that a band could march at the front of a column of troops and entertain the guys behind them, and not send the sound forward to entertain the guys who are going to shoot you in about a mile. So that's the basic configurations. And we also have some non-brass instruments to add a little color and lightness on the top of the ensemble. We have our woodwind section, a flute and a piccolo, 2 flutes. It's a rare privilege to have that many here. And of course we have our battery of percussion. We have cymbals and snare drums and 2 bass drums. And you know, they're rope tensioned, and they have a lower pitch than we usually tune percussion to these days. Now, I would like to speak about one particular instrument, because we always say, well, where do we get these instruments from? It was a frequent question. So the story of one particular instrument, we like to go to an event in Northfield, Minnesota, the Vintage Band Festival, every few years. And 2 of our members, Doug and Elsa, happened to be walking down the street one day, and they looked in a jewelry shop, and there was this smashed thing on the front, and there's a picture of it here. Pretty much the way it looked then, some loose pieces and kind of looking like it got run over by a steamroller. Well, arrangements were made on the spot to acquire the instrument, and then one of our members, who does so much of our brass repair, Nancy, wave a hand in the air a little bit, did all the restoration work on it, and it plays quite well, and it is here today. Zach? So we have many instruments in the band that have histories as bizarre as that. Keep going, keep going, way down there. So it's pretty much life size. Thank you, Zach. Thank you. So with that, I think I'll turn this over to Dwayne Roberson, who is going to do the next sequence. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Keep this on, okay. My name is Yvonne Marie, and I am happy this afternoon to be introducing that we are going to take you back to the 1850s, just about the same time that this house was built. And we're going to bring the story up to the beginning of the Civil War. Now, you are going to hear a story of dedication, of honor, of personal achievement, and of heroism.
The date, August 13, 1860. The place, the town square, Springfield, Illinois. The mood, jubilant, excited, all abuzz. You see, one of Springfield's very own was nominated for President of the United States the previous May. That resident, of course, Abraham Lincoln. So the people of Springfield were still celebrating for President of the United, or excuse me, still celebrating Lincoln's nomination in August? Well, of course, he wasn't elected yet, but that wasn't what was causing all the level of excitement. So then, okay, well, it must have been that there's an anticipated parade that day, led by the local town military company, the Springfield Grays. Well, that was probably a good idea. That probably would be exciting, yes, and good for the whole family. Well, that was not all. There was still something else. So there was this other event planned for later that day, and it was going to be even more exciting than anything before that. And what it was that one of President, or the future President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, was going to be able to come and see a show put on by the local or by an area military company, and that was going to be the major highlight. Well, that doesn't seem like a highlight to watch a military company. The real highlight of the day was the visit of a much heralded volunteer military company from Chicago that had been on tour throughout the United States and East and Midwest. All summer long, the company controlled the headlines of all the major newspapers. Over and over again, the word Zouave filled the headlines. Let me say that again, Zouave. And the visiting military company, the United States Zouave Cadets. The exciting event in Springfield later that day was the cadets' performance of the Zouave military drill that was all the rage in the nation. And it was the cadets' commandant, Colonel Elric E. from Ellsworth, who brought it to our country. You see, Ellsworth was getting just as many headlines as the cadets themselves. At 23 years old, he had become the most talked about young man in the nation. And both the cadets and Ellsworth drew large crowds wherever they went. Springfield was no different. A large crowd gathered and they treated them like royalty. amongst the crowd that afternoon were several well-known people and other prominent residents, including Abraham Lincoln himself. Ellsworth had spent some time in Springfield the previous summer, and he had met Lincoln, as well as General John Cook, Commandant of the Springfield Braves. Ellsworth made a big impression on both Lincoln and General Cook. In fact, they became friends. So you can see how special this performance was to Ellsworth. And it was a lot of pressure, but the performance was special to both Lincoln and Cook as well. You see, General Cook knew how Lincoln felt about Ellsworth's incredible abilities as a leader and intellectual, and he wanted to help Ellsworth become as successful as he knew he could be. So do you think this was a case of needing to know someone to get ahead? Well, maybe we need to take a look at the facts from that day and the popularity of both the cadets and Ellsworth. 56,000 Springfield area residents attended a military drill show by the cadets. Maneuvers being performed did not seem possible by human beings. The crowd went wild with applause for the squad cadets and their handsome, superb commandant. Lincoln was enthralled with Ellsworth's command skills. After the show, Ellsworth and the cadets ended a wildly successful tour and returned to Chicago. One day after their return, Ellsworth was heading back to Springfield. Lincoln had chosen a student at law. Let's pause a while to reflect on where this impressive Ellsworth man came from. From early childhood, Ellsworth showed strength, determination, conviction, a winning faith, and proper manner. Part of that determination was bringing out strength and conviction in others. By age 15, thank you. By age 15, he had studied and memorized the major military tactic manuals of the day. And he had heard countless stories from the American Revolution and even the heroics of his own great-grandfather, George Ellsworth. He was asked to drill local volunteer military companies, and in his drills, he demanded from the soldiers total commitment to their training. He is also expected, had an expectation to proper total commitment to their training. He was also expecting proper ethics, social behavior, and excellence as a member of society. All this came from a young man of age 15. Elmer had a younger brother, Charlie. They had a great time playing in the towns of Malta and Mechanicville, New York. That's where they lived, and they found lots of things to get in trouble with. Elmer was a good big brother, but he expected his little brother to be just as strong and determined as he was. It was a tall order that tested Charlie's fun, loving spirit. Just to give you a taste of that relationship between Elmer and Charlie, here's a little conversation between them. Did you ever realize that you would soon be a man?
Well, I haven't really given that idea too much thought.
You must not treat the subject lightly, for it is one of great importance to everyone. Charlie, have you decided on a profession in your life?
Well, actually, I have. Yeah.
You have? No,
Yeah.
wait a minute. What kind of profession have you chosen?
Well, it's the kind of profession that really works in the cities, amongst the crowds.
Well, Charlie, I don't really understand, but whatever you've chosen to do, I would be happy to help you in any way possible. What is your chosen profession?
Well, I'm happy to hear that because, well, I intend to go out to the big cities and be a pickpocket.
Elmer was a lot more serious about his goals in life, but there was one goal that by far surpassed all others. He wanted to earn enough money to support his mother and father, who had given him so much. But he was definitely concerned about whether this choice to be a military man would give him the kind of money to achieve such a goal. He was always intrigued with the canals that ran through Mechanicville and out to the Great Lakes, as well as the highfalutin passengers that passed by in their canal boats. He got to know everybody on those boats, as well as the canal boat captains, and he was drawn to the West, the New West, in such a way that he just decided he couldn't take it. He had to go there. So he got on board some of the canal boats from one stream to another, and he moved his way all the way out to Kenosha, Wisconsin, which he eventually then changed to Chicago, Illinois. Big move. Ellsworth worked a lot of odd jobs, but after a while, he found himself as a partner in a patent soliciting office. Ellsworth finally began to feel that his steps toward a solid career had truly begun. In fact, in a letter to his brother, Charlie, the 20-year-old Elmer wrote, "Ambition, consciousness of innate power, resistless energy go where it would seem I am most likely to succeed." However, not long after this letter, Ellsworth was devastated by Charlie's death from smallpox. His grief had weakened him immensely. Elmer also developed some military connections while in Chicago, as well as in New York, and on his business card, he already wrote Captain Elmer Ellsworth. And this was his way of making himself a little more prominent. The patent soliciting business gave Elmer enough money to bring his parents under his protective wing, and for them, a life of relative leisure. However, the cruelties of the New West fell upon him. The business partners put their trust in someone who they later called an infernal scoundrel and were robbed of everything. The business fell into ruins. Elmer suffered loss of pride and confidence from these events, and all of this happened by the young age of 20. Penniless and starving, Ellsworth's pride would not allow him to accept any form of charity, even a bowl of oyster stew from anyone. But it was that bowl of oyster stew that brought him to meet James A. Clybourne, a connection that would bind Ellsworth and the zouave style of military drill. From his youthful curiosity and interest in the books of military drill, and with the encouragement from Clybourne, Ellsworth started to see his military interest grow immensely, and opportunities to become drill master for several volunteer companies began to appear. Little did Ellsworth know at that time the day would come when he would put his own zouave company through military drills at West Point in front of the authors of these well-known manuals he memorized. And he also did not know that he would write his own manual of arms, which to this day is still in use. You see, in the pre-Civil War years, volunteer military companies were very popular, but they were more like social clubs, where in addition to military drills and performances, of course, there were activities included elaborate balls and social gatherings. Bright, colorful uniforms were common in these organizations, and many of them collected large membership fees. They gave themselves company names, usually representing where they were from: Elgin, Illinois, the Elgin Continentals, to the Rockford City Grays, and of course, the Springfield Grays. Ellsworth loved military uniforms that had style and color. It was the romantic side of warfare. Sweeping plumes, flashing sabers, golden spurs, and flowing sashes. Ellsworth was enthralled with this classic romanticism of war, and the combination of his leadership skill, desire to be of service to others, his intellect, bravery, handsome features, and chivalry gave him a knightly character, all in a 5'6" frame. Another influence on Ellsworth's military interest came from overseas newspaper reports about events in the Crimean War. It was from these reports that he first came across the name Zouave. The name came from an Algerian mountain tribe, the Zouawas, who had a special method of fighting that was remarkably effective. They were so effective that the French adopted their methods, renamed their units Zouaves, and also distinguished themselves in battle. The French Zouave units were known for their brightly colored uniforms and their special system of military tactics. It was no surprise that Ellsworth immersed himself in studying the Zouaves. Fortune came Ellsworth's way with the arrival in Chicago of Charles A. Devier. He was commander of one of the most highly decorated French Zouave units. From his time with the commander, Ellsworth learned to be one of the most skillful fencers in the area, gained extensive knowledge of Zouave military drill tactics, and discovered the answer to one of his most burning questions. Why did the Zouaves wear loose, baggy pants and shirt sleeves, and why did the shirts and coats not have collars? He quickly learned the answer. No one could do the exacting Zouave drill in a stiff, tight-fitting uniform. The Zouave soldier had to have complete freedom of motion through his maneuvers. He began teaching Zouave classes in Chicago gymnasiums, and they began to grow in popularity. After gaining a job as an aide to General R.K. Swift, he earned the rank of major, an impressive achievement in the military world, considering that he had not actually enlisted in the military. Another military company, the Rockford City Grays, decided to have a banquet and invited military men from all over northern Illinois. Ellsworth was drill master for the Grays through the summer months after Rockford heard of his story. When Ellsworth arrived in Rockford, he immediately began to make an impact. The men sacrificed much of their personal lives for the responsibility of being a soldier, especially a Zouave soldier. Ellsworth met the love of his life that summer in Rockford. This beautiful woman was Caroline Spafford, known as Carrie to her family and friends. Her family had a nice home, were warm-hearted, and were privileged with money, culture, and social standing. After a successful and productive summer, the Rockford Grays planned a spectacular finale to show their intricate maneuvers, and military officials from all over the region attended. Gray's magnificent performance, Ellsworth's time in Rockford had concluded, and he militarily moved on, but not romantically. Carrie and Ellsworth were in love. In November of 1858, Ellsworth found himself in a new city. Ellsworth's first letter to Carrie had the header, Capitol House, Madison, Wisconsin, November 6, 1858. Ellsworth was instructing the governor's guards, but his time was fraught with frustration due to weather and longing to see his love, Carrie, in Rockford and his family in Mechanicville, New York. After leaving Madison and paying a visit to his parents in Mechanicville, Ellsworth returned to Chicago, where he decided to start the law studies for a future career as an attorney. He planned to marry Carrie, and she deserved a loving and comfortable life. And like the Ellsworth everyone knew, it didn't take him long to get his law studies started by clerking for a local judge in return for access to his law library. But life did not smooth out yet. Carrie decided to continue her studies at a school in the East, and soon she and Ellsworth said their goodbyes, and Carrie left for New Hampshire. This left Ellsworth feeling desolate and depressed. When the lawyer for whom Elmer worked decided to leave his law practice, Elmer found work in another law office, and he still had access to a law library. But his mental focus was another obstacle. Large amounts of reading were taking a toll on his ability to retain the information. But he remembered some study advice another lawyer gave to a group of law students. And Ellsworth found this lawyer's method made for great progress in his studies. That knowledgeable lawyer, Abraham Lincoln. Low pay for his work, starvation, illness, and extensive hours of law study took a damaging toll on Ellsworth's mind and body. Instead of spending his pay on food for the week, he needed to buy the materials and supplies for his study. But his determination was still so strong. In 1859, things began to turn around for Ellsworth. Because of the Rockford Grays' successful performance, the Chicago National Guard cadets requested his leadership. After initially turning them down several times, and with the cadets nearing the point of disbanding, Ellsworth attended one of their meetings and ended up raising their enthusiasm to a fever pitch. He told the cadets if they wanted a company of soldiers in every sense of the word and were anxious to make that company a source of improvement morally as well as physically, then he would command them and he would enforce the strictest discipline. The next day, he took command, took steps to rebuild the company, and gave them the new name, United States Zouave Cadets. For membership in the company, Ellsworth developed a set of resolutions, including purposes, physical and moral development, military tactics, promotion of good feeling and gentlemanly conduct, securing the respect of the public, and in particular, any member entering a drinking establishment while in uniform would be promptly expelled. Ellsworth and the cadets then got to work. After the Chicago July 4, 1859 parade, Ellsworth wrote, "The Chicago Tribune and Press, which has hereto been decidedly down on all military companies, after giving the company a long but flattering notice, concluded by saying, we but express the opinion of all that saw the drill yesterday morning when we say the company cannot be surpassed this side of West Point. The regulations in regard to liquor and such was rigidly enforced. The effect on the boys has been excellent. It has given them a name to be proud of and upheld, and they will conduct themselves accordingly. Swamp fever spread like wildfire across the land, even to California. After all the promising and recent events in his military life, Ellsworth described part of his nature as freed from all care, giving free rein to an ambition as boundless as the air we breathe, not for personal advancement merely, but to do good to my fellow man, making everything consistent and honor subservient to this. To estimate this latter or second peculiarity of my disposition, I must have some powerful incentive. This was very much the same kind of ambition that was driving Mr. Abraham Lincoln at Springfield about this time. Ellsworth had described the humanitarian and the dedicated patriot. He, like Mr. Lincoln, was seeking prominence, not for personal gain, but to do good for his fellow man. And so we return to the beginning of our story. Colonel Elmer Ephraim Ellsworth had brought the U.S. Slav cadets to the peak of military respect and awe. On July 2nd, 1860, the company left on a tour of large eastern cities, and after making a loop through the east, they arrived in Springfield on August 13th. If you remember from the first part of our story, Ellsworth became a law student of Abraham Lincoln. This relationship continued to build to enormous mutual respect, with Ellsworth writing in a letter to Carey that